Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Angela walked toward his car as told. When she opened the front passenger door, she saw Richard walking in a specific direction. The two men had intended to approach Angela and force her to follow them with a knife, but Richard unexpectedly appeared, forcing them to hide in the dark to assess the situation. They thought they were well hidden, but as the two of them were evaluating the situation, an arm locked onto one of their shoulders and dragged the man out of the dark place with a powerful force, slamming him onto the ground. Thud. Another accomplice on the ground was terrified and wanted to flee. Before the man could take a few steps forward, Richard, who was just behind him, appeared in front of him like a ghost. Fear filled the accomplice's face as he quickly retreated, tripping on his companion before falling to the ground. Both of the 6-feet-tall rough men sat ridiculously on the ground, staring at Richard with a sullen face as chills were running down their spines. Richard's eyes were not only cold, but murderous as well. Are these two men trying to kidnap Angela? Who the hell are you guys? What were you up to? Richard questioned coldly. We did nothing wrong. Why did you hit us? The two rough men immediately asserted themselves while also looking at each other, contemplating a way out. The men had brought their gang with them today in order to deal with Richard and take advantage of the opportunity before fleeing. Richard's inner rage was at its boiling point. Anyone who dared to touch Angela was planning their own demise. On the other hand, the woman was sitting in the car waiting for him, but she was curious what was happening. When she heard a man's voice, she alighted from the car and came over with her bag before noticing Richard with his folded arms and two middle-aged men at his feet. It was then she noticed something. Richard, be careful, they have knives, she exclaimed as a light of reflection caught her eyes. The knives of the two men shoved toward Richard's body almost immediately. However, their armed wrists were then buckled when they were only half a palm away from Richard. Even though they were all men, they sensed a strong opposing force emanating from Richard. He clasped both of their wrists at the same time and the two knives dropped onto the ground. However, before they had time to react, they saw that the saber leaving their hands was acutely caught by Richard. Swish! The sharp tip of the knives shot through the calves of the two men within the next second. There were howls sounding like slaughtered pigs in the underground parking garage. Tell me who ordered you to kidnap Angela, Richard demanded coldly. We did not abduct anyone. We're going to sue you for intentional bodily harm. Hearing that, Richard knelt with his eyes bloodthirsty and cold. You're sealed, huh? How about we go for another leg? No. Okay, I'll spill. Andy Graham ordered us to kidnap Miss Myers. We were coerced, the man explained. At that point, Angela arrived with her bag as well. She was furious at these two people who had the audacity to kidnap her. She was terrified. Had Richard not been around to pick her up, she would have ended up in real danger, considering the men were armed. The same thought occurred in Richard's head as he clenched his fist. If you dare to touch her, you can start planning your own funerals, he said with his eyes darkening. The two gangsters had never seen such a terrifying pair of eyes before. They resembled a demon from hell. If they had kidnapped Angela today, the consequences would be disastrous, as Richard's eyes had said it all. They would be hunted down for the rest of their lives if they attempted it again. We're sorry. We had no other choices. Please let us go. Yes. Miss Myers, we've been forced. I'll handle this matter. Get in the car and wait for me, Richard told Angela as he stood up and walked to the side to make a phone call. She nodded and entered the car as told. 10 minutes later, the two men were arrested by the police nearby. Richard then drove her to the restaurant where he had made a reservation, promising to take care of the situation later. Starting from tomorrow, you must be accompanied by bodyguards wherever you go, he demanded, leaving no room for counter-arguments. Okay, I was careless. I didn't expect such a threat to happen to me, Angela replied as she nodded. I don't trust the general bodyguards from the company, so I'll send 2 of my subordinates to protect you, he stated firmly. Won't this deplete your resources? She inquired, blinking. She was, after all, not a member of the organization. The use of elite soldiers and powerful generals to protect her seemed excessive. Don't be concerned. I'll make the necessary arrangements, he assured with a smile. Angela was the most important person in Richard's life. Naturally, her safety must not be jeopardized. Andy was later apprehended at his residence, and he was still perplexed when he was arrested. He arrived at the bureau to discover that the 2 men he had sent had betrayed him. Needless to say, Andy would never confess his wrongdoing. He believed that no one could convict him in this case. However, his face went ghastly pale when an audio recording was played. His instructions from that night were clearly recorded amidst the busy, loud bar. There were also recordings of his phone calls with the employees. Evidence that he had previously dismissed was presented to him one by one. After all, the people behind all of this were Richard's subordinates, not regular police officers handling the case. On top of that, the evidence of Andy's embezzlement of money had been discovered one after another. It was as if there was an invisible big hand behind the scenes, exposing all of Andy's heinous actions over the years. This enigmatic power was something he could not even imagine in 1,000 years. At last, he was overcome with remorse. Who is supporting Angela? This time, Andy would be jailed undoubtedly. With only an afternoon, all of Andy's crime was fully uncovered and documented at the police station, leaving his 2 accomplices unable to flee as well. Though Angela was not in danger this time, the event had affected her mood at the restaurant. I want to introduce you to a few people, Richard said as he placed some dishes onto her plate. They are my best bud, including his wife and children. Okay. I'm looking forward to meeting your friends as well, Angela responded while smiling lovingly. As she was eating, Richard told her about the close-knit relationship with his best buddy. She was engrossed in his stories, so she set her cutlery down and listened intently while baring her chin. Wow! You all have been through fire and water. Of course, Angela was acquainted with Elliot Presgrave, the well-known business figure. I'll arrange a meeting with them. Artie is also expected to return soon. Richard was also looking forward to the reunion of the trio. Angela informed her mother about the incident involving Andy that evening, and Daphne immediately provided the police with the evidence she had, ensuring that B***starred would be imprisoned for the rest of his life. Gilbert also contacted the police and asked that the situation be thoroughly investigated. During the weekend at Hassan residence, Ruka received a call from the translation department on Friday afternoon, requesting her to report for duty on Monday, which arrived in the blink of an eye. At 7:30 a.m., she put on a professional suit along with light makeup before being sent to the translation department by Scarlett's driver. The department had no high-rise structures, but only a 3-story structure with strict defense. Though it may appear normal from the outside, it was heavily fortified. Working here instilled a strong sense of mission, as if one had to set aside all personal emotions in order to devote oneself to a noble cause. Ruka stepped out of the car and took a look around. She could not stop herself from taking a deep breath before walking in. After a series of inspections and registrations, she was finally led to the translation department's entrance. She then pushed open the door to a conference room where there were 2 men and 2 women inside that happened to be the new interns. At this precise moment, their gazes were drawn to Ruka. The new interns had already learned from internal news that another intern would be joining them. Unlike the others who had been admitted through the normal procedures, Ruka had obviously entered through the back door. You must be the intern who's been added recently. You're extremely lucky, a girl strangely exclaimed as she bit her pen cap. Hello, my name is Ruka Singed, the lucky girl introduced herself politely. Mia Murillo, said the girl who had just spoken. Hello, my name is Caspian Gibbons, a dashing young man said. I'm Michelle Johnson. Theodore Quintana. The other two interns did not look pleasant, after all, having another intern increased their chances of being fired. As a result, they were clearly hesitant to welcome any more additions. This was a silent but heated competition for a spot at the translation department. Subsequently, another man and woman appeared. The man was chubby while the girl was arrogant as if she was born superior. Inara Clarkson was her name and she was said to have the most powerful background of any intern. She was the third generation of government officials' descendants, so she had a better chance of staying than anyone else here. Nobody in the room was her opponent. Ruka paid close attention to her because the two girls on the opposite side lowered their heads, whispered, and looked at Inara with envy as soon as she arrived. So, you're the one who cut in line, huh? Inara asked, her eyes widening with disgust. The ones who did not adore Ruka in the first place turned to look at her as soon as these words were spoken. Only Caspian and the chubby guy seemed friendly while the other four interns saw her as a threat. Ruka's face flushed and she remained silent for a few moments. This is unfair. We are selected from thousands of applicants, yet you can just enter through connections. You should feel ashamed to be here. Inara sneered, wishing Ruka would withdraw and leave. If my capabilities don't allow me to stay till the end, then I will naturally leave, Ruka responded calmly while raising her head. Inara, I believe Ruka simply missed the assessment time. You don't have to give her a hard time. Caspian tried to put in a good word for her. Yo! We haven't even started our internship yet and you're already into her? Caspian, you should worry about yourself before others, Inara chastised him. Shut your nonsense, Caspian rebuked with his reddened cheeks. Why don't you just quit on your own, Ruka? Mia propped her chin up, a threat lurking behind her bright eyes. It's better than being booted. Though Ruka was embarrassed, she was not about to back down. I said, if I'm not qualified to stay, I'll leave, she stated flatly. Oh, wow. How can you be so sure of yourself? I'm honestly curious about your secret supporter now. Inara scowled as she thought, I doubt her background or connections to be more superior than mine. I heard you're just the daughter of a regular diplomat, so what's the big deal? Ruka's background had already been looked up by Inara. At this point, Ruka was taken aback by her counter. Thankfully, a graceful figure entered the room. It was Victoria. When Ruka saw Victoria, her lovely eyes narrowed slightly. Victoria's beauty shone even brighter under the spotlight. She was the type of woman with a great temperament, aura, and talent. Victoria took a seat before turning to face the new interns. Finally, she paused in front of Ruka's face and looked her in the eyes for a few seconds before making her opening remarks. We only have 3 openings this year and I'm sure you are all excellent candidates. I hope to see you guys work hard this internship, and who knows, you could be my next colleague. I'm excited to work with you and grow into a capable person like you, Miss Parfait. Inara sucked up at her superior quickly. Yes. Me too, Mia added immediately. Then, I'll look forward to your performance, Victoria said with her lips pursed. Ruka, even though you came in later than the others, I believe in your ability, she said while emphasizing Ruka's name. Thank you, Miss Parfait, for your favor, Ruka quickly expressed her gratitude. Though Victoria was innocently looking at Ruka, she was actually contemplating a question in her head. What secrets does this girl have? Is she the one Ren likes? After the orientation with the 7 interns, Victoria rose to leave before summoning Ruka. Ruka, I was tipsy the last time I talked with Run, so I hope I didn't scare you. Victoria said tenderly as she led her to the corridor outside. Not at all, Miss Parfait, Ruka said, shaking her head. Oh. By the way, why did Ren invite you to dinner that night? Do you guys have a close relationship? Victoria persisted in her inquiry. It was then Ren's words immediately filled Ruka's mind. Shaking her head, she explained, Mr. Hassan and I share nothing in common. We just happened to have dinner at the same time by chance. Was it just a coincidence? Victoria's eyes narrowed, it was difficult to fool her. Ruka lowered her head, her long eyelashes concealing a twinge of guilt. Yes, I needed Miss Hassan's help with something. She was not present at the time, so I met with Mr. Hassan, who took me out to dinner instead. Ren did not strike Victoria as a laid-back individual. Aside from official business, his personal life was low-key and private. Not only did he not appear friendly, he was even a little cold to outsiders. To her surprise, he casually invited a girl to dinner. This was completely random and absurd. If there's nothing else, Miss Parfait, I'll be going through the materials. Ruka refused to be questioned any further. Victoria patted her and said, Okay, go ahead. Don't tell anyone that Ren recommended you. Ruka's cheeks flushed slightly as she heard this. Yup. Ren introduced me, so our relationship is definitely unusual. Victoria's eyes gradually became cold after Ruka entered the conference room. She could tell that Ruka was trying to distance herself from Ren. Is it Ren who taught her that? Victoria's heart clenched in pain. The more she inquired, the more information she gathered. Ren was obviously showing Ruka how to defend herself. Returning to the conference room, Ruka sat at the very back to avoid drawing attention to herself. But how could she not gather looks and whispers? Inara had no intention of letting her go, nor had the focus to read the entry materials, so she crossed her arms and sneered, Hey, Ruka. Who did you rely on to get into this department? Why don't you tell us? She doesn't appear to be relying on her ability, Mia responded sarcastically. Ruka ignored them by concentrating on the entry documents. This time, Theodore added fire to the fuel. Ruka, just say it. Say it to frighten them. However, she only continued to ignore them while Michelle hummed, She doesn't want to tell us. You know, she probably didn't come in on the right track. Offended by the words, Ruka looked up at Michelle and shot back. Have some human decency. You're getting agitated. What, was I correct? Michelle sneered. When Caspian noticed that everyone was picking on Ruka, he could not help but speak up for her. Is everyone having fun playing the mean girls here? This is not high school, but the translation department. Can't we just try to get along? Furious, Inara glared at Caspian before exclaiming, Why do you care so much about her, Caspian? I suggest you mind your own business. Don't forget that your father works for my father, and if I'm in a bad mood, I'm not afraid to deliver a few words to my father. You should be aware of the consequences. His fist on the table suddenly clenched tightly, clearly in rage. Ruka raised her eyes at Caspian at this point, and a worried expression flashed across her face. She shook her head slightly as he turned to face her, indicating that he did not have to defend her. Though Caspian only aided her in the name of justice in the beginning, his heart pounded as he gazed into her clear and glimmering eyes. There was determination in her eyes. Indeed, Ruka had made his heart race. She had an inner attraction in addition to her beautiful appearance. The team leader eventually arrived and escorted them to their assigned internship positions. Following that, they went to the cafeteria for lunch. Caspian called Ruka from behind as she walked through the garden after lunch. Ruka. Thank you for standing up for me earlier, Ruka thanked him gratefully. But I'm not strong enough to silence them. There's no need for that. It's natural for them to be disturbed due to my circumstances, she explained calmly. Ruka, please do not hesitate to contact me if you require assistance in the future. I will gladly assist you, Caspian stated solemnly. Thank you very much. Let us encourage, assist, and progress together over the next 3 months. Okay. He nodded. As Ruka was walking down the large garden aisle, she noticed Inara and her friends standing there, looking excited and admiringly in one direction. Oh my God! We're so lucky to have seen him on our first day. Mia exclaimed, her feet splintering with excitement. I have longed to see him with my own eyes. Inara was ecstatic. Oh my goodness! Tonight, he'll be in my dreams. He's so attractive. Michelle was equally captivated. Ruka had no idea who they were looking at as she was blocked by the trees. Out of curiosity, she approached anyway as she too had to travel down this path. Her gaze moved from the sheltered area to the road, where she noticed a few black cars parked with a group of people standing nearby chatting. Her heart skipped a beat as her gaze was drawn to a tall figure in the crowd. Mr. Run? Ren's body was bathed in the midday sunlight. He was speaking to an elder and there was a gentle, soft expression on his face. At this point, Ruka was dazed. Looking at the figure who could be frequently seen back at home, she found it difficult to greet him despite being a few feet away. It was as if an invisible barrier had dawned between them and she could not find the courage to go up to him. He just appeared to be so out of reach, like the sun in the sky. Although he was young, everyone admired him for his sense of authority that was not based on anger or arrogance. At that moment, Inara and the other girls were going insane and every pair of eyes was staring at Ren, piercing him to the core. Except for Ruka, who looked at him calmly with a faint smile in her eyes as if she was in awe. Perhaps even with a touch of vanity, as this man, who was unapproachable in everyone's eyes, had just invited her to a meal a few days before, she could still see and talk to him as long as she stayed in the Hassan residence. Ren had initially turned his back against the fangirls, but due to Inara and the others' antics, he turned his head slightly and looked toward them. He had only intended to cast a glance at first, but he could not take his eyes off the direction. Ruka's slender figure amidst the young girl crowd drew his attention. With her red lips, she shot him a faint smile. Oh my God! Mr. Hassan is looking at me. Mia covered her mouth in delight. He's clearly looking at me. Inara screamed angrily. I think he's looking at me, Michelle said, clutching her chest. Surprised, Ruka panned to the 3 excited girls and thought, is it necessary for them to argue about who Ren is looking at? She lifted her head and stared right into Ren's eyes that had fallen on her. Despite their distance, she could feel her heart skip a beat as her lips curled into a wide grin. At this point, a leaf had fallen onto her hair. After noticing it, Ruka reached out to touch it, but Caspian, who was standing beside her, got to it first and gently removed it for her. As a result, she raised her head and returned a grateful smile. This scene had caught the attention of the man from not far away. The originally noble and charming man's aura became a little colder as he cast a glance at Caspian.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.